Imagine this. You wake up one morning, just like any other Wednesday. You reach for your phone, your thumb instinctively heading for that little blue bird or the colorful square icon. But today, they're gone. Not just from your phone, but from every phone, every computer, everywhere on earth. Social media has vanished. Poof! No more scrolling through endless feeds of baby photos from that cousin you haven't seen in a decade. No more arguing with strangers about whether a hot dog is a sandwich. It's a global digital blackout. The silence would be deafening, wouldn't it? Suddenly, the entire planet would have to look up from its screens and figure out what to do next. The initial shock would be something to behold. Picture the scene. People would be restarting their phones, convinced it was a glitch. They'd be calling their internet providers, absolutely furious. "My Instagram is broken," they'd shout, only to be met with the same confused response from the person on the other end of the line. It would be a collective worldwide panic attack. The world's main source of distraction, news and validation would have just evaporated into thin air. For many, it would feel like a part of their brain had been switched off without their permission. A phantom limb they can no longer feel or use. It's a wild thought. A planet of 8 billion people suddenly forced into a digital detox, all at the same time. Think about how fundamentally our daily routines are built around these platforms. Your morning alarm goes off, you check Twitter for the latest headlines. On the train to work, you scroll through Instagram to see what your friends were up to last night. During your lunch break, you watch a few funny videos on TikTok. It's the background noise to our lives. Without it, those little gaps in the day would suddenly feel enormous. What would you do while waiting for the kettle to boil? Actually talk to your colleagues? Read the back of a shampoo bottle? The possibilities are both terrifying and kind of exciting, aren't they? This isn't just about losing a fun app, it's about losing a primary tool for modern life. People run entire businesses from their Facebook pages. Activists organize massive movements using hashtags. Artists find their audience on Instagram. The sudden disappearance would be like taking away the telephone in the 1950s. It would force a complete and total rewiring of how society functions, from the way we buy our clothes to the way we overthrow governments. The world would have to rebuild its communication infrastructure from the ground up, and that process would be chaotic, messy, and maybe, just maybe, a little bit hilarious to watch from the sidelines. In this new unplugged world, daily life would undergo a massive transformation. At home, the dinner table might actually become a place for conversation again. Instead of a family of 4 silently staring at their individual screens, you might hear actual voices. "How was your day, dear?" would no longer be a rhetorical question. Parents would have to find new ways to connect with their teenagers, probably involving a lot of awkward silences at first. People would rediscover hobbies that don't require Wi-Fi. Imagine people picking up a guitar or a paintbrush, not to post a picture of it, but just for the sheer joy of doing it. The home would become less of a charging station and more of a living space. At work, the change would be just as dramatic. The constant distraction of notifications would vanish. Productivity might actually skyrocket, at least for a while. Office communication would have to become more intentional. You couldn't just drop a link into a Slack channel. You might have to walk over to someone's desk. Blasphemy, I know. Industries that rely heavily on social media marketing would be thrown into absolute chaos. Influencers would have to find real jobs. It's a scary thought for them, I'm sure. Companies would have to go back to old-school methods, print ads, television commercials, maybe even hiring people to shout on street corners. It would be a return to a more analog way of doing business. For students, school life would be completely different. The social pressures that come from platforms like Instagram and TikTok would evaporate. There'd be less cyberbullying, less worrying about follower counts, and less comparing your life to the perfectly curated highlight reels of your classmates. Friendship would be based on actual, in-person interactions. This could be amazing for mental health. Of course, it also means you'd have to pass notes in class again to make plans for the weekend, a skill that has been lost for a generation. It's a trade-off. Better well-being for a slight dip in logistical efficiency. I think most parents would take that deal. And how would we get our news? The days of learning about a major world event from a viral tweet would be over. We would have to return to more traditional sources, turning on the television for the evening news, buying a newspaper, or listening to the radio. This might slow down the news cycle, which could be a very good thing. There would be less misinformation spreading like wildfire, and more time for journalists to verify their stories. We'd move from a constant, overwhelming fire hose of information to a more manageable trickle. It would require more effort from us, the consumers of news, to stay informed, but the information we received might actually be more reliable. Let's talk about the good stuff, because there would be plenty. The most obvious positive change would be the return of genuine human connection. We'd be forced to engage with the people right in front of us. Conversations would have more depth because you wouldn't be half listening while secretly checking your notifications under the table. Friendships would be nurtured through shared experiences rather than shared memes. Imagine going out for a coffee with a friend and giving them your undivided attention for a whole hour. It sounds radical, but it used to be the norm. We might find our relationships becoming stronger and more meaningful because they would be built on a foundation of presence. Another huge benefit would be the improvement in our mental well-being. So much anxiety and depression is linked to social media. The constant pressure to perform, the fear of missing out, FOMO, the endless comparison with others. It's exhausting. Without it, a huge weight would be lifted from our collective shoulders. Teenagers in particular might experience a profound sense of relief. Their self-esteem wouldn't be tied to the number of likes on a selfie. We would all have a bit more space to just be ourselves, flaws and all, without feeling the need to broadcast a perfect airbrushed version of our lives for public consumption. Our sense of self-worth would have to come from within, not from external validation. And what about our privacy? We have willingly handed over vast amounts of personal data to a handful of tech companies. They know who our friends are, what we like, where we go, and what we buy. In a world without social media, that fire hose of data would be turned off. We would reclaim a significant amount of our personal privacy. There would be no more targeted ads following you around the internet, trying to sell you something you searched for once 3 weeks ago. The feeling of being constantly watched and monitored would dissipate. We would regain a sense of autonomy over our own information, which is a fundamental right we seem to have forgotten we ever had. Finally, think of all the free time we would suddenly have. The average person spends hours every day scrolling through social media feeds. If you took all that time back, what could you do with it? You could learn a new language, take up a sport, volunteer in your community, or simply spend more time sleeping. Our creativity would flourish. Boredom is the mother of invention, and we've effectively eliminated boredom from our lives. By reintroducing those quiet, unstimulated moments, we would give our minds the space to wander, to dream, and to create. We might become a society of painters, poets, and musicians again, instead of a society of content creators. That doesn't sound so bad, does it? Of course, it wouldn't all be sunshine and face-to-face conversations. There would be significant downsides. For many, social media is a lifeline. Think about people who are isolated due to illness, geography, or social anxiety. Online communities provide them with a sense of belonging and support that they might not find in their immediate physical environment. A person with a rare disease can connect with thousands of others going through the same thing on a Facebook group. A gay teenager in a small conservative town can find solidarity and acceptance on Twitter. Taking that away would leave a massive void, plunging many people back into a world of profound loneliness and isolation. The loss would also be a huge blow to communication and logistics. How do you quickly organize a surprise birthday party without a group chat? How do you keep in touch with family living on the other side of the world without seeing their photos and updates? It would become much harder and more expensive to maintain long-distance relationships. We'd have to go back to writing long emails or, heaven forbid, actual letters. News of births, engagements, and graduations would travel much more slowly. The casual, ambient awareness we have of each other's lives would disappear, and we'd have to put in a lot more effort to stay connected with our wider social circles. Furthermore, social media has been a powerful tool for social change. Movements like the Arab Spring and Black Lives Matter gained incredible momentum because of these platforms. They allow marginalized voices to be heard on a global stage, bypassing traditional media gatekeepers. They are essential tools for activists to organize protests, raise awareness, and hold power to account. Without them, it would be much easier for governments and corporations to control the narrative and suppress dissent. The democratizing effect of social media, for all its flaws, would be lost, and the world might become a less just and accountable place as a result. So would life be better, worse, or just different? In my opinion, it would just be different. It's a classic trade-off. We would trade hyperconnectivity for deeper connections, digital anxiety for potential loneliness, and global awareness for a smaller, more intimate world. We'd gain privacy, but lose a platform for protest. We'd get more free time, but lose the effortless link to our loved ones. It's not a simple case of good versus bad. Personally, I think we'd eventually adapt. Humanity is resilient. We would find new ways to connect, to organize, and to share our lives. It would be a quieter, slower world, for better and for worse. And maybe, just maybe, we'd finally get around to reading all those books we've been meaning to.